Reconnect and heal today. Welcome to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Love Never Dies Radio on the Dream Vision 7 radio network and Dr. Turndorf Turn on the Love on Binge Networks TV. And we're also live streaming on YouTube Live. So I have a question for you. Do you feel a little down in the dumps? A little blue? Well, did you know it is absolutely normal to feel depressed from time to time? We all have challenges and circumstances that knock us off our feet, make us feel vulnerable, trapped, defeated. And depression can result also from just being overtired and worn out. But if you know how, you can recover from these ebbs and flows that life hurls you without damaging consequences and without the use of drugs. So today we're going to be talking about how you can recognize the danger signs, and we're going to talk about natural ways for you to get on top of the blue mood, the depression, full-blown depression, just intermittent depression. We're going to go through all of this. So I want to introduce you again to my friend who I greatly admire, Sandy Sanderson, founder and CEO of Electromagnesium Skin and Muscle Care Products. She has a Bachelor's of Arts and she has a specialty in marketing and business. And after years of chronic stress and deadlines, she developed severe heart arrhythmias and a health crisis that led her to develop her special line of transdermal magnesium. And this magnesium, electromagnesium, is a natural magnesium delivery system with products for all ages. So welcome back, Sandy.
Hi.
Hello. I'm glad to have you. So, am I blue? Am I blue? This is what we're talking about, being blue, which everybody who's living and breathing has felt or currently feels, right?
Yes, actually, I just thought of something when you were singing the blue. There is an association with feeling blue and actually the color blue. Did you know that?
The energetic frequency of blue.
Yes, so they don't recommend that you paint your bedrooms blue because it'll make you feel sad.
Oh, I never thought about the color itself altering your vibration just from being surrounded in that color vibration.
I know, it's amazing. Once you start to think about language, you think about how many things we take for granted that have meaning, really.
Yeah.
And so one of those is blue and sadness. And it is a normal part of life, the ebbs and flows of life. We have cycles. We have waking activity cycles during the day, and then we have quiet, restful sleep cycles during the night, and that's normal. So everything, it goes up and down. We revolve the day and night. We have a revolution, and the earth revolves around the sun, and the sun itself, our solar system, revolves around the bigger universe. So everything in the universe is cycles and ebbs and flows. So to be good, to have good health and to be very healthy, we need to smooth out those ebbs and flows so that's not like a roller coaster ride. So we can feel healthy and in control and on top of it. However, sometimes we get on the roller coaster ride, usually after a trauma, some kind of very stressful event, or even chronic stress. So when you have a little background stress that's happening all the time that wears you out, that wears you down. And finally, there's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and you just have a meltdown or a breakdown, and you can't do what you used to do anymore. You just feel so exhausted and so tired, and your enthusiasm goes away, and you just want the phone not to ring, and you don't want to see people, and you just want to crawl into some kind of cocoon and hibernate. And you know how, and that's not really bad. That's your body telling you, talking to you, that you need to rest and you need to recover from something, that where you've overtaxed yourself. Unfortunately, these days in the modern societies, we reach very quickly for drugs and often prematurely. And people don't realize, many people don't realize that that can be quite dangerous, because there are many psychiatric medications, such as antidepressants, that actually can cause more damage than if you were just to have a rest and have a break and then recover naturally.
You know, Sandy, I was thinking about a patient of mine, a therapist who had been on antidepressant drugs and anti-anxiety drugs, because often depression and anxiety go together. And she had been on them for a long time. And every time she tried to come off, she would get rebound symptoms. I talk about this in the new PTSD book, right? Because, you know, we'll probably talk more about this, that people with PTSD generally have depression and anxiety. And depression and anxiety is often a symptom of PTSD that's been undetected. She tried to get off the drugs, and she would get the discontinuation or rebound syndromes, where the depression was worse, where the anxiety was even worse. And this is what makes people find it almost impossible then to get off the drugs. So it's a really dangerous thing. You don't want to be getting on these drugs unless you have exhausted every other natural approach.
Yes, it's a terrible revolving door. So Professor Peter Gotchi, who was the original founder of the Cochrane collaboration, so that was a group of scientists that went through the psychiatric studies and literature that's been published. And they found that with those studies, the data, the raw data, they analyzed the raw data, not just the conclusion or someone's interpretation of the data. And they said that by and large, the improvements were not significant, or so not significantly different to the control groups that just had a rest. You put your good nutrition in, you sleep well, you take away all your other stresses, and you just take the time to recover. So there was not much significant difference about what they did.
That's important, Sandy, because depression tends to be self-limiting, which means usually after about 6 weeks, it starts to diminish. So unfortunately for most people who jump to the medication, you're on the medication and it's 6 weeks past, and you would have gotten better without all the other dangerous side effects.
Yes, and that's actually the magical time that's mentioned in a lot of the studies as well, the 6-week mark. So Peter Gotchi likens it to a cold. You know, when you get a cold, you've picked up some bugs somewhere, and also you've probably run yourself down again with excessive stress, and that actually weakens the immune system as well. So you're more likely to catch something and it'll lay you out when your immune system has been weakened by stress and not enough magnesium.
Absolutely, because in the PTSD book, I talk about the fact that the depletion of magnesium occurs when you're under stress. That could be physical, emotional, psychological, chemical. The stress causes your body to rapidly excrete magnesium, which triggers HPA axis dysfunction, which instantly triggers PTSD. And it also instantly triggers depression, and it instantly triggers anxiety. It's all the same thing. We're just putting a different name on it.
Yes. So it's very important to recognize when you're feeling down and sad, you've had too much stress, you're just exhausted, that you know, you will naturally recover if you do the right things. And it's a sign of the times that people get caught on the treadmill and then they can't come back, because antidepressants can cause irreversible brain changes, brain damage. And this is what people don't realize. It's very, very difficult to come back and recover and regenerate.
It's so very important point, because it's true with most of these drugs. You know, like I got stuck on Nexium because I was young and I wasn't thinking about it in my early 20s, and go try to get off of it. Then you get the rebound acid because it's a proton pump inhibitor. And then when they wake up, they overproduce. Most people can't get off these drugs. It's a disaster, you know?
Yes, it's quite toxic for the body. And the other thing that the studies showed quite strongly was that it often induced suicidal ideation, where that thinking about suicide was not present before they
Think
started.
about that. Is that nuts? Think about it. You know, sometimes I'll see these commercials. Oh, this is the drug for an allergy. Side effects include itchy, runny nose and eyes and sneezing. The side effects are the condition. Here with the antidepressants, you're becoming essentially more depressed. Now you have suicidal ideation you didn't have before. So it's affecting your brain negatively.
Yes.
And
I have personal experience with my own father who suffered a lot from very bad stress, and he had industrial poisoning with lead poisoning, and that leads to anxiety, depression, very bad migraine headaches, and basically all the symptoms of schizophrenia. So this was in the old days, in the 1970s, in the early 70s. They didn't have all of the diagnostic techniques that we have now, and they couldn't measure really they didn't even consider that he had poisoning of some kind in the brain. It was just give him drugs straight away. And he'd never recovered from that, and he was bounced in back and forth to hospital. He sometimes admitted himself because he didn't feel, he knew something was going wrong. And I found out subsequently he had been entered into a trial, a drug trial with Valium. And I still remember, I was only a child, 15 years old, but I do remember them talking about 100 milligram doses. And they had given him shock treatment as well. So they put him through the ringer, and he ended up, when he came home, he was on the lounge and he just couldn't get up. He couldn't move his body. He was like a vegetable. And he had overheard the doctor saying, well, we've tried everything. We can't help him. He's going to be like this forever. And he didn't want to put us through, you know, he wanted to save us from the burden. And he committed suicide 1 week after coming home from hospital.
Oh.
And it's a tragedy that never needed to happen. He could have recovered. He was actually well for most of his life. He was in World War II at 17, conscripted as a boy, and got shot and lost the use of his left arm. And he had been a carpenter, so that affected him a lot because he couldn't do his profession he was trained for. You know, his self-esteem.
But depressing also. It was so depressing, that in and of itself, because it's such a huge loss. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it is a loss. And for men as well, their self-esteem, it was quite affected because they could then get an ordinary job, you know, a labouring job or something. So my parents were migrants to Australia after the war, and I grew up here, but originally we're from Austria.
You're kidding. So that's where my family's from.
Well, we might have some similar genes.
I never knew that. Oh, that's so funny.
So he was conscripted by the German army in Austria at the time, and he wasn't even allowed to use a gun. He was responsible for the donkey that carried all the provisions. And so as a child, I would hold his left arm, which had 3 very stiff fingers that just wouldn't move, and they were super cold. They were like they'd been in the fridge. Oh. And I used to ask him, I said, how did you get that? And he would tell me the war stories and how the Russians came overhead and the shrapnel and the bombs were dropping, and he got shot in the arm and in the artery, and the blood was pumping out. I mean, I'm like 7, 8 years old listening with open ears. It was probably not really rated for kids, but he felt like really good just to tell somebody what had happened, and I was really listening with open ears. So a friend of his in the troop jumped off his horse, because they were riding horses in those days, tore off his shirt and tourniqueted his arm because he would have died. It was centimeters away from his heart. And they took him back to the camp where they had medical, and he recovered, but he, you know, today they would have used microsurgery and stitched everything back together again, and he still would have had the use of his fingers, but it was very primitive in those days. So he recovered quite well and resiliently. Then they hit boom time and they went to Canada and there was a big building boom and lots of money was flowing. And also in Australia, when they came to Australia, it was very easy to get jobs. But in the last 3 years of his life, he only got very, very sick from stress overload and from toxic overload from these chemicals in the last 3 years of his life. So he was 47 when he died. So that's like a good 44 years of a pretty good track record. And that's another indicator that something seriously is wrong because it hadn't been brewing for a long time. So normally schizophrenia, or statistically, there's nothing normal about it.
It would have started in early adulthood.
Yeah. So in the early 20s or even late teens sometimes. But anyway, there was an autopsy done. So the doctor that performed that said afterwards, he probably only had another 2 weeks left anyway, because his heart had swollen to nearly double its normal size from the medications, from all the treatment that he'd received in the hospital. And I couldn't, years later as an adult, I tried to find the reports. It was all destroyed. That clinic had closed down because I thought, I wonder if we could sue them, but it's all too late.
Yeah, it's a real tragedy. It really, and I'm imagining that it really was part of your destiny to develop a mission to try to help people heal their issues naturally, you know.
It was a big trigger for me to pay attention in life because of what can happen to your health. Health became huge. I became fastidious with my food. Everything had to be natural and lots of salads and vegetables, and I was very, very conscientious from that point onwards. I paid attention to a lot. So it's really been, for me, a lifetime of how do you have a good lifestyle and look after yourself so bad things don't happen.
And then it became a mission, because really anyone who finds his or her way to you becomes a family member. You take people under your wings. And Sigmund Freud always said that our career choices evolve from the traumas we suffer in our childhoods. Like the kid who's peeking through the keyhole, spying on his parents while they're making love, he becomes the gynecologist, peeking through the people. So there's always a connection, and it's a way to try to work through the trauma. I couldn't help him, but I surely will do what I can to help everyone else who crosses my path to detox, to restore, to rejuvenate, to reverse what is considered chronic and irreversible. This is your mission,
Yes, and sadly, I don't think things are by and large getting a lot better, because we're still suffering from a lot of industrial pollution.
Or worse, more than ever.
Yes, it's the heavy metals, it's the lead, it's the mercury in the environment. All of these toxic metals can pass over the blood-brain barrier into the brain, and sometimes they can carry aluminium, and a lot of aluminium lodges in the brain. That's associated with Alzheimer's,
dementia. We say aluminum in the American English, so I'm just like translating in case people wondered what is aluminium. Yeah, aluminum. Yeah, so yeah, Alzheimer's, dementia, and then we also know that these heavy metals can affect your metabolism and can cause blood sugar problems, hypoglycemia, diabetes. People never put it together in that way, but yeah.
Well, yes, and they can suppress your thyroid, so then it's interfering with the endocrine system. And I haven't even mentioned, the plastics and the phthalates, the outgassing of the plastics. And then we have fluoride in the environment, and that is so bad for the pineal gland. Fluoride only gets excreted 50% generally, and it accumulates in the calcified tissue of the body. So therefore the bones accumulate it, and it brings calcium into the pineal gland. And that starts to become quite dangerous, because the pineal gland is a tiny little gland. It sits, at the back in the center of the brain, just outside the blood-brain barrier. So it's actually bathed in the blood that goes around the circulation. And they call it traditionally the third eye.
Third eye.
You know, so when you see like Indian people and they've got the little dot there, and a lot of religious traditions have revered the pineal gland as like a little pine cone. So you see in artifacts, they've mimicked the pine cone. It's very sacred. And the French philosopher René Descartes called it the seat of the soul, because he reckoned it was like this invisible umbilical cord that connects us with the divine intelligent universe, and it allows us to have a cable connection to use our intuition and to know things ahead of time, and to connect with our spiritual selves, because the body is just like a vehicle, like your car.
I love what you're saying, Sandy. And you know, I just realized when I or my transdimensional grief resolution method coaches connect with loved ones in spirit, we feel the tingling at the base of the skull, because the download of the energetic frequency is coming right into the pineal gland, right there. You know, and if you're not connecting to spirit, you get depressed, because spirit is, you know, our loved ones in spirit are one with God, and God is love. So if you have this whole receiver turned off, you don't connect to spirit. That's depressing.
Yes. So I think it turns people more into like robot-like creatures, that we can only depend on what's given to us, what the information is in front of us. But really, that's just a collection of information, and we don't necessarily put enough meaning behind it, or we take things too literally and don't understand other kinds of meanings, which people normally use their intuition. They like, you know, we use many senses when we communicate, not just our ears, not just our eyes. You know, it sounds, it smells. And there's something else, that's the sixth sense. So that's what we rely on the pineal gland for. And apparently it kind of vibrates a little bit like a tuning fork.
That's that vibration.
It's receiving frequency. So your eardrum receives frequency of sound, and then it's decoded, and the brain decodes the sound and gives you meaning. But the pineal gland vibrates and picks up other kinds of frequencies and gives you other meanings, the same as the brain is decoding the sound. The brain can decode the meaning that's picked up by the pineal gland.
So we have to take a break, but I think this is really important for us to talk more about how the pineal gland gets clogged up and how then that connects to depression. So we'll talk more when we come right back from the break. See you in a minute. Hi, it's Dr. J.B. Turndorf here. Are you feeling stressed, tense, jumpy, jittery, anxious, or having panic attacks or angry outbursts or disturbed sleep? Are you worried that you or someone you love is going to get sick or even die? Are you depressed and feeling hopeless, like the world is coming to an end? Or are you suffering aches and pains or stiff muscles, low energy, or falling into self-damaging or addictive behaviors like binging on junk food, the internet, or TV, or abusing drugs or alcohol, or not eating right, or exercising, feeling like, what's the point? If you said yes to any of my questions, you are likely suffering what I call the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. Don't despair. My energetic system upgrade is your rescue remedy for the panic epidemic that is plaguing our world. The energetic system upgrade has already helped some of today's top leaders. Now you can experience your own energetic system upgrade healing transformation. To find out more and to schedule your session, visit drjamieturndorf.com/energetic system upgrade. That's Dr. Jamie Turndorf, TURNDORF.com/energetic system upgrade.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, also known as Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in and find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. Visit AskDrLove.com to find out more.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you yearn to get along better with your life partner or spouse, friends, family members, and even coworkers, Dr. Turndorf's book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, Dr. Love's 10 Simple Steps to Cooling Conflict and Rekindling Your Relationship, shows you how to turn conflict into connection for a lifetime of lasting love. Find out more about Kiss Your Fights Goodbye at AskDrLove.com. This is Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. This show is for you, the listener. Once again, here's Dr. Turndorf.
Again, welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Networks TV. So we're talking with Sandy Sanderson about how to overcome the blues naturally. And just before the break, we were speaking about the pineal gland and how it connects us to spirit through that like energetic frequency that comes in. So what's the link between the pineal gland being clogged up and depression?
Right. So what's normally associated with the pineal gland is the production of melatonin, which happens at night during deep sleep. And, it's associated with other kinds of hormones as well. And the feeling of joy, experiencing love, and having epiphanies. So remember we were talking before about meanings. So we're receiving like vibrations, we're getting those frequencies, and then the brain decodes the meaning. And we've solved a problem and that aha, and that feeling of elation, and the pineal's connected with all of that decoding of meanings of life, your place in this world, how you relate to other people. All of those connections are that other sense that we attribute to the pineal gland. So what happens is if it starts to accumulate, and Professor Luke several years ago in the UK conducted a study on cadavers, and she found people that lived in fluoridated areas that drank fluoridated water the whole lifetime in their tea and their cooking, and were exposed to it. Their pineal gland became saturated with the fluoride and calcification, and it had several thousands of times more fluoride in the pineal than the bones. And everyone had at the time thought it was the bones that were storing all the fluoride. So it is an enormous attractor for chemicals like that, and that inhibits how it works. So if it's responsible for making melatonin, which it was a very powerful antioxidant for the brain. So remember, we did a show before about sleeping, and when you're sleeping and you're going through your normal sleep cycles, those very deep times of rest in those cycles are when the pineal gland makes melatonin. So that hormone is as a powerful antioxidant for the brain. It cleans up all the rubbish. So your brain, it's just such an amazing instrument, and we probably still don't know anywhere near enough about it. But it's responsible for consuming about half of the water you drink, and half the energy. It's an organ with a very high energy requirement. And the scans that you see where they do the scans, it's all electricity going off whenever you're using your brain. It's like lightning is happening all the time in the brain, because the firing of the neurons, and there's this massive amount of energy, and it needs a lot of magnesium, it needs minerals, it needs a lot of water. And so we need to pay good attention to the brain, and all of that energy requirement, that high metabolism has a byproduct. It has acidic byproducts. And so during the day when we're active and we use, our brain a lot as well, actually more than the night, but we're coming up with products of metabolism which are acidic. They need to be buffered and detoxed and removed. And for that, we rely on several enzymes and hormones, and for the brain itself, particularly melatonin. So if you're not sleeping properly and you're not, and bear in mind, this doesn't include sleeping tablets because that doesn't put you through the normal natural deep sleep cycles. You're not necessarily producing the melatonin if the sleeping tablets are knocking you out. So it's the melatonin production, which is extremely important for cleaning up the debris, the waste products of the brain's own metabolism. So if you wake up and you haven't slept properly, you haven't produced enough melatonin, you're going to feel like crap. And you're going to feel like, you've been put through the ringer, and you've got brain fog. You can't think clearly the next day. You're really low in energy. Your metabolism is affected. You don't have any spark left. You reach for more coffees and more probably sugar. I don't recommend that, but that's what people do to just get an energy boost and feel up. And you see a lot of shift workers, they're munching, chowing down on the candy bars. And it's really so bad for your metabolism that actually can lead you to diabetes. So be careful about diet. Nothing beats a good sleep and making that melatonin. And that will actually help you lose weight as well. It's contrary to thinking, oh, if I sleep more, I'm gonna lose weight. Well, yeah, if you don't sleep well, you don't make enough melatonin, that will affect your metabolism. You can get metabolic syndrome. And that means the smallest thing you eat can't be used as energy enough and just gets put on as fat weight. So you've got to be quite careful with your metabolism, and sleep is absolutely essential for that.
And the paradox is when you're depressed, you tend to either sleep too little or sleep too much. But the people who are sleeping too much and depressed aren't necessarily getting a good restful sleep either.
No, and this is the body's way of trying to slow you down. It slows down your metabolism. Just like when you get a cold, you don't have a lot of energy, you just want to sleep it off, a bit like a hangover actually, which is mimicking a cold because the body's had an alcohol toxic overdose, and it makes you feel tired and lethargic because you need to sleep. It's always telling you, it's always talking to you. Your body.
It's interesting because the second function of sleep, well, the two functions that we know, right? The dreaming is, firing the neurons and keeping the brain in shape. And then we also detoxed in sleep. So if you don't sleep right, you're not getting detoxed. Yeah.
That's right. So really depression comes about because the brain hasn't been able to take the garbage out, clean up the pollution, and so it gets clogged with stuff. And the acidic components also tend to attract too much calcium, and calcium can block tubes and neurons. And guess what controls the calcium?
Magnesium.
Yes. So if you've been under a lot of stress and have difficulty sleeping, you need to really put a lot of magnesium back to try and counteract the effects of the stress, the acidity, and the excessive calcium. So because you do need calcium, it gets pushed into the cell channels that need to, of the muscle cells that contract. So when you need to work and run and do stuff, calcium goes in, magnesium comes out, so you've got tension. But then your magnesium has to go back in and your calcium come out so you can relax again. So there's the ebb and flow of life again, contraction, relaxation. And so that's our day. Our day, we're a lot contracting and doing actions, and it's the metabolism and spending energy, and all of that spending of energy spends magnesium and produces acidic byproducts and oxidants. So something becomes oxidized. And it's funnily enough, when the pineal gland isn't working enough, we tend to end up with overproduction of serotonin, because the melatonin, the activity of the pineal in making melatonin, controls or regulates serotonin, which is another vital neurotransmitter. So in the past, they used to think serotonin was your downer, and if someone was psychotic, they would give them serotonin, and then they would, relax and calm down. And then dopamine was supposed to be the upper one, and if you got depressed, they would give you dopamine to lift you up. And so it's a lot more complicated than that. So the neurotransmitters have like a group interaction, and serotonin is one of those middlemen that goes between hormones and between other neurotransmitters, and it's involved a lot in balancing. So if something happens to that endocrine system and that neurotransmitter system, and that can get out of whack if your gut microbiome is out of whack, because you make a lot of the serotonin in the gut, and the microbes help you make the serotonin.
90% now they're saying 90% of your neurotransmitters that regulate your mood are made in the gut.
Yes, so it's if you've got bad gut, it can also make you feel like crap.
Literally like crap. And I was also thinking, I had a patient in New York who was very typical of a lot of people who've been on psychotropic meds to treat depression and anxiety. She was on a lot of them. When one stopped working, they raised the dose. Then when that didn't work, they added a second. When that didn't work, after raising its dose, a third. She was on 15 different drugs. With each drug, she got more depressed, which the doctors couldn't understand. But, in the Eastern medical tradition, they talk about liver toxicity, not just bowel toxicity, but the liver is all clogged up. And the more toxic the liver is, you can get depressed. In Chinese medicine, I think they believe depression and liver toxicity are one of them. With each drug that came off of her, she got less depressed and less depressed because the toxins were coming out. You know how a lot of people, when they detox, the bowel, the kidneys, the liver, they feel like, I found Jesus. They just feel lighter.
Light. That's right. You feel light and so happy. Isn't that a big difference though? Because it takes a lot of energy to be happy. You can't really feel happy when you don't have enough energy and metabolism flowing through. If the electrical system isn't working, what the body does is suppress energy, because it's trying to conserve energy to give it to the most important parts, because it's got to keep your heart pumping, and you go then on, like the computer safe mode, everything's rationed. The available energy becomes rationed. And so all your energy systems become depressed.
Literally.
So it's depression in the brain is really depression of energy. Energy has to be ratcheted downwards, because more energy is going to create more toxicity, because you haven't controlled cleaning out the garbage.
So your body slows the metabolism so that you produce less metabolic waste to have to detox, because the garbage pail is already up to here and it can't handle any more toxic waste.
Yes, and you mentioned before about the liver, the saying someone's liverish is when they're very angry or easily angered. And so that's another little indicator something's not quite right with the liver. It's how easily do they flare up and get cranky pants.
Now, also too, in Chinese medicine, it's believed that the anger is stored in the liver. And there is a big link between suppressed anger and depression, beyond the diet, the toxicity. I mean, emotional toxins have the same chemical effects in the body as other forms of toxins. And how many times have I seen over my decades as a shrink, people with buried anger being dreadfully depressed, and that when I help them find their anger, like, oh, when we come back, I'll tell you about the 300-pound vet who was depressed. It's an amazing story. We'll be back in a moment. it's Dr. Jamie Turndorf here. Are you feeling stressed, tense, jumpy, jittery, anxious, or having panic attacks or angry outbursts or disturbed sleep? Are you worried that you or someone you love is going to get sick or even die? Are you depressed and feeling hopeless like the world is coming to an end? Or are you suffering aches and pains or stiff muscles, low energy, or falling into self-damaging or addictive behaviors like binging on junk food, the internet, or TV, or abusing drugs or alcohol, or not eating right, or exercising, feeling like, what's the point? If you said yes to any of my questions, you are likely suffering what I call the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. Don't despair. My energetic system upgrade is your rescue remedy for the panic epidemic that is plaguing our world. The energetic system upgrade has already helped some of today's top leaders. Now you can experience your own energetic system upgrade healing transformation. To find out more and to schedule your session, visit drjamieturndorf.com/energetic system upgrade. That's Dr. Jamie Turndorf, TURNDORF.com/energetic system upgrade.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, also known as Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in and find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. Visit AskDrLove.com to find out more.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you can't stop crying over the bodily loss of a loved one, Dr. Turndorf's #1 international bestseller, Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased, will show you how to toss out the tissues and transform your grief into joy using her groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique that enables you to reconnect and even heal unfinished business with those in spirit without the assistance of a medium, channeler, or psychic. Sign up for Dr. Love's free newsletter at AskDrLove.com and receive an exciting gift, a free excerpt of Love Never Dies. And now, back to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Hello again, and welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network and Dr. Turndorf. Turn on the Love on Binge Networks TV. Right before the break, Sandy, I said I was going to tell you about this 300-pound vet that I treated at an inpatient hospital where I was on staff. This was in the early 80s. He came in because he was so profoundly depressed and he was masturbating multiple times a day in order to mood alter because he got like a shift in his neurotransmitters. He was also anxious. So he liked to wear shorts. And in my office, there was a funny little vinyl chair that the hospital provided for the patients. It was a wing chair. So he's talking and he's saying, you know, when he was a little kid, his mom said to him, if you're ever mad at me, I'll drop dead of a heart attack. Because I kept pushing what was he angry about? What was the underlying factor that was making him so depressed? Because I felt it was rage. So I'm working with him. Well, you can't kill her because she's already dead. You know, I didn't say out of the body in those days. And finally, one day, I see him start to tremble and shake like a volcano that's about to erupt. And then he starts to cry. And the next thing you know, he leaps off of his vinyl chair. The cushion gets stuck on his leg because he's wearing shorts. And he lands in my lap, bawling like a baby with his rage pouring out of him. But would you believe that after that, he wasn't depressed anymore? That's what we're talking about, how the buried rage often triggers depression. That's a toxic chemical. Your liver's holding it. It's poisoning you.
Yes. So it's like he he squeezed a pimple and then it was able to heal.
It was more like a boil, I'll tell you that. It boiled to the surface. And, and the thing is also, I often thought, you talk about being depressed. Every end organ system is being depressed. When you're depressed, you're sitting on your rage. It literally, you're depressing it. And the energy you have to expend to keep it pushed down is depressing. You don't have any energy left.
Yes, eventually you burn out because you're using up all your reserves and the body can't afford to spend that much energy. Right. So eventually you crash. So you mentioned before, the anxiety is usually a precursor. So that requires a lot of energy. So people that worry a lot, they're always worried about what might happen, what they're doing, what people are thinking, their job, worrying about every if you're a worrier, turn the TV off as my recommendation.
Yeah, all right, don't read the news.
That's right. Because worrying sucks a lot of energy out of you. And it also produces a lot of toxic waste byproducts. And
the adrenaline, the corticosteroids, all these are very acidifying. Now, let's talk in the last segment about a natural plan and by the way, if you're on medication for depression, you can't just stop because you get rebound symptoms. So you have to have your prescribing physician titrate you off. And it's very important before you titrate off the medication that you have these other healthful practices in place so that you don't just flatline when you come off the med. So let's talk about the natural ways to reverse depression.
Yes. So remember I mentioned before about serotonin, and it's quite significant because melatonin, when everything's working properly, takes over from serotonin, and serotonin subsides and melatonin comes in at nighttime so that you can clean up with your antioxidant process. If you have an excess, if you're not making enough melatonin, it's not being cleaned up, you can get oxidized serotonin, which becomes toxic. So that's a neurotransmitter that's not removed. If you're getting medications which are SSRIs, so that's serotonin reuptake inhibitors, you can get what's called serotonin syndrome, which is like the very, very bad end of the toxic spectrum, and that can be potentially fatal. So you have to be very careful with serotonin and mucking around with the neurotransmitters. So I always recommend try and do things naturally and allow the body in its own wisdom and its own genius to sort out the problems. All we have to do is make sure we provide the right environment where it can do its job and don't interfere. And so that means, good healthy diet, fresh food, natural, organic, wherever possible organic, because the pesticide residues and the chemicals and the synthetic artificial things that often are prevailing in the food supply can lodge in the body and clog our tubes and just create havoc and mess. So you want to eat like a nice clean diet as much as possible. And, you won't really have cravings for sugar and processed food. Once you train your body to eat the right way, it will be the normal, enjoyable thing to do. And if someone gives you something which is sweet, you'll go, sugar. I don't like it.
Exactly. It's so funny. My publicist came with me when I did a week-long training in Costa Rica. He doesn't cook. Everything was takeout. But it was all grown there, lots of vegetables. And for the first time in his life, he said, "Oh my goodness, I feel healthy. I can't believe what I feel like eating this way." So you want so many vegetables on your plate, all that color. Sandy, we just had an organic restaurant open up where I live in Florida. The poor manager, I call him up and I start grilling him about, well, tell me exactly what is the oil in here, and tell me what are you using. And the poor man, I think he left town. By the time it was a half hour on the phone, you use agave? Are you kidding me? And you're cooking with olive oil. I drove them crazy. But I mean, I've been crazy like this, the way I eat for 43 years now. the more extreme you get, the harder it is to eat out in a restaurant. There's no doubt, you know.
Well, that's a little tip for any entrepreneurs listening to come up with really good menus if you want, to attract this growing number in the population.
Yes.
It's a huge amount of people that need to eat right for their health.
Absolutely. It's and I know most people, they think, oh, you told me it's healthy, but there are people who really want to know what's in it and don't want to be eating something made on a wheat bread from the local bakery, riddled with glyphosate residue, which tears your guts up. And then how can you fix your neurotransmitters, right?
Yeah, you've got to watch, especially the processed grains as well. So it kind of dries everything up in your intestines and makes it difficult to eliminate. So when you eat right, your microbes are healthy, everything's juicy and moist, and everything, is well formed. And if you can go to the toilet properly every day and evacuate your bowel properly, your whole mood changes. You sing, you vibrate with an energy that's just wonderful, and you feel like everything is beautiful. You see everything with rose-colored glasses. I think that's how we're meant to see life. We're programmed to be happy. Human beings are naturally good-hearted, loving, happy people. But when we get polluted, we get depressed because the garbage system's not working. And
that's why they say you're in a poopy mood.
Yeah. Don't be so shitty, as we say in Australia.
Oh boy, here we are. We're in trouble now.
It's an adjective.
Oh, okay. So healthy diet. Now, and by the way, too much exercise is a problem. And people don't realize moderate is good. Over 50, if you do heavy exercise, you're actually creating more problems, more depression. Can you speak about that for a sec?
Yes, because whenever you exert yourself and work very hard, you're spending a lot of magnesium from your magnesium bank account. The older we get, the less we store in the cells. So we don't have that much reserve. So you have to put a lot more on your body to compensate as we get older. And especially if you do a lot of physical work, if you go to the gym a lot, you can recover. We need some amount of stress to get things going and to push things along, but then you need to rest so you can recover, then you bounce back stronger. So this is another cycle, the cycle of pushing and stress, and then the cycle of rest and recovery. And you need to learn to manage and balance that to be well and healthy. So it's not necessarily that stress is bad, or exercise, but it's getting the balance and getting the ebb and flow right that counts, and putting the good nutrients back that you spend from your bank account. If you get so low in magnesium, it can cause terrible problems. It can cause heart arrhythmias. It can cause the calcium to leach out of your bones. It can cause osteopenia and osteoporosis in athletes. So pay good attention to your mineral content, and especially magnesium. And of course, you need magnesium for the whole electrical system. So remember, we talked about pollution and getting clogged, and the tubes clogged, and things not moving, and getting sluggish and slow and depressed. Well, that's the electricity flow. Again, if your cables get blocked, your electricity isn't going to flow very well, and you can get blockages in certain areas. You can get cramps, tingles, twitches. Just the body's not working very well to have the flow of energy to the places it needs to do the work, and stuff gets stuck. So you need magnesium for the electrical flow, for metabolism, because the mitochondria make our ATP using magnesium. And if you have too much sugar, for instance, that's going to spend too much magnesium, because the sugar produces a lot of acid. Then you need a lot more antioxidants. And there's a seesaw effect between the lower the magnesium, the higher the sugar sensitivity. It can actually lead you into diabetes if your magnesium gets too low. As you lift magnesium, your sugar sensitivity subsides. It's a little bit like a seesaw effect. The problem is that once people have been diagnosed with diabetes type 2, it's often very difficult to reverse that completely, but you can manage it very well by doing the right things.
And also, we want, I was just thinking about something people don't think about often, but heating the body in saunas is known to help the neurotransmitters balance. It can be an antidepressant in and of itself to heat the body up.
The heat shock effect, and it kind of stimulates the thyroid, which is involved in the metabolism as well. So your lymph glands, and when you're sweating, so this could be sweating in a nice hot magnesium bath, sweating in the sauna, and working and exercising and sweating. So as you perspire, you're pushing out a lot of toxins through the skin, which then lifts the load on the kidney and the liver. So that can also help detox, especially if your digestive system's not working well. And, if the liver's been overloaded, the more you can perspire out your waste products, the lighter the load on your liver. It just helps everything.
Also, getting to bed early, a very dark bedroom.
And I recommend a walk on the beach, because you need sunlight. The exposure to sunlight during the day, so full spectrum sunlight, triggers the pineal gland. Then at nighttime, you're more likely to make a good amount of melatonin once you've been exposed to the light during the day. So I like the beach because you've got you can walk through the ocean, you can soak up some magnesium minerals from the sea, and magnesium ions are in the air near the beach because they kind of fly around, and you can breathe them in, and you just feel so exhilarated with the sunshine and the magnesium. And then the nice walk, you increase your blood circulation, that gets more oxygen into the cells and the capillaries. So just go natural as much as possible.
And don't eat after 6. Don't eat after 6, so your body can do cleaning rather than be busy with digesting. That's important too, right?
Yes, that's right. Well, digestion takes a lot of energy, and if you're digesting late at night, you're not resting your whole vagus nerve. The whole digestive system isn't at rest enough to then trigger the pineal gland to start making the melatonin, because you're still busy with metabolism to handle the digestion. So you can have a restless night if you eat late. And so just rest. Can
you believe 1 minute left? I want to make sure everybody again knows, because one of the things, if you sign up for your newsletter, right, at electromagnesium.com, you let people know about specials and discounts, right?
In the footer of the homepage, there's a sign up, subscribe link to the newsletter. And yes, we regularly send out specials from time to time on different products. So, and also information about magnesium. The studies are always being done. There's always new information, tips, recommendations, whatever I can find to help make people's lives better. And I'd love you to join in and see what we have to offer. There's also
and there's a discount, right? If people put in Dr. Jamie, they get a discount.
Yeah, Dr. Jamie.
Right.
Code to give you a 5% discount, and that tells us that Jamie's got a big audience that's been coming over.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having you. Really wonderful. It was a very helpful show. Very important. People are so embarrassed to talk about depression. So I'm glad that you spoke so freely, and it was just wonderful.
Yes. And it's good for your heart as well. So when you're depressed, you need to pay attention to your heart, to put lots of magnesium around the heart area.
Yeah. Well, I heart you. See you next time. Take care, everybody.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.